Hello. Hello, hello. Welcome to Two Pastors and a Podcast. Do, 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 do.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thursday, quick fire Thursday. We have some unfinished business from Tuesday. Unfinished business.
Important things to discuss.
Yeah. Now, remind me in a little bit, because I want to wait till a few more people are on.
You know my brain doesn't work like that.
Well, I want to talk about Sunday. Sunday, I'm a little nervous about Sunday.
This Sunday? Last Sunday?
This Sunday.
This Sunday. What is this Sunday?
I want to make sure I can hear you. Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Good morning, Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Let us know you are watching, if you are.
But seriously, what is this Sunday? Did I
It's
forget?
spring break Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really nervous about Sunday. So
It's fine. There just won't be anybody here.
that's my point. That's my point.
They're all going to Florida.
When you're South Carolina and Florida is where everyone's going right now. When you pastor a small church and
Half of them leave.
spring break comes around, maybe more than half our church is gone.
I could go count how many people that volunteer are going to be gone. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, it's a
6.
lot.
6?
It's a lot this week. A lot of people are gone. So I'm going to say it right at the get-go. Good morning, Dawn.
Hi, Don.
I'm going to say it right at the get-go. If you are not going anywhere, I'll look at the camera. If you are not going anywhere for spring break, please be here Sunday. You have no idea how many people are not in town this week.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. So please make an effort to show up because you never know.
Unless you're sick, do not come.
You know, there could be visitors on this Sunday just because it's a spring break Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's only 5 of you here, they're going to think that the church is dead. And it's Sunday. It's very
they're not
possible
coming back.
that they could think that way. Also, don't sit in the back rows.
Oh, yeah.
There's not going to be a lot of people here on Sunday. Please don't sit in the back seats where visitors will feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Sit closer, make it feel cozy. I might take out all the back rows this week. I might take them all out. Then you can get mad at me later. Don't care. But I'm going to take all the back rows out and make you sit close.
I double dog dare you to do it.
I have to do that. There's going to be nobody here, and everyone's going to sit in the back row. So it's what
You can get close if you sit in the front row. That's your buy-in. You're allowed to make faces at Josh while he preaches.
It used to be different.
Speaking of buy-ins,
They used to. So the balconies in the back rows used to be for the poor, which is crazy to think that churches were like this. But people with money always think they can run the show. But the front pew, the front rows, and especially the very front pew, you could buy those seats.
Yep.
You could pay for the closest seats in the house.
and they wanted to.
And they wanted to.
Yeah.
And so they became like, it wasn't your tithe, but it was an above and a beyond.
Yeah.
And you got to sit at the front row. Nowadays, it's like,
They want to buy
hey,
the back seats.
you know what I'm going to do? Maybe here's what we need to do.
Oh.
If you want to sit in the back row, then I expect a 10% tithe and a 5% premium. Let's just go back to the good old days. I mean, that's what all the fundamentalists want to do. Anyway, let's go back to the good old days. You want to reserve a back row, you better give a premium.
I already sit in the back row, so it's fine.
That's true.
They're safe. They're safe.
In fairness, bringing the kids up front would be a little chaotic.
Then you would feel really empty when we left.
It feels like that anyway. We all know we're a small church, and when the kids leave the room, it's like, oh, half the building's gone. Okay, that's cool.
They enjoy it. That's fine.
No, it's all good. But seriously, let's I want to challenge my church to start thinking about visitors and not
Yeah.
about their own comfort. So that means sit in the places where most people do not necessarily want to sit, especially when they're new, so you can make room for people to come in and get comfortable, and then maybe they'll stay and want to be a part of the church.
That's called hospitality.
That is called hospitality. So let's do that as a church. Let's be hospitable with where we
Yeah.
sit.
Absolutely.
Also, it's really hard to preach when you got nobody in the middle and everyone's on the wings and way in the back. So this Sunday of all Sundays, think about it and let's maybe make
Also,
some change.
The only people who have assigned seats are the kids. The rest of you can sit wherever you want.
It might be time.
No,
It
stop it.
might be time to change the sanctuary around. It might be time.
You already changed my office around. You don't need
I
to
know.
change anything else around.
And listen, when you get in a rut,
You already made the marks on the
there's too
floor.
much like there's too much. That's why I like to change the order of service from time to time. Is there's like we just get in this kind of robot mode. We do it with our butts and seats too. We get into a robot mode and it's like, well, this is where I sit. This is my seat. Well, maybe I just need to move the chairs. And then you need to find a new place to sit. And then move the chairs again. Maybe every week we need a different chair setup.
This seems like too much work.
I mean, what else am I going to do?
I don't want to be a part of that.
Okay, back up. Case in point. Just be ready on Sunday. Please be here.
Please come. If you're here, please come.
Mayday, Mayday. Please, anyone who are in earshot, please come to Harbor on Sunday. We need as much help as we can possibly get this Sunday. So please come.
My favorite part of the last couple of weeks is you coming into my office and looking at the list of people that I don't have available for that. And you're just like, oh no.
I know. The 23rd.
Nobody's here.
Already been dreading it for 2 months. And here it is. It's finally upon us. So yeah.
It's just one Sunday. It'll be okay.
If there's a Sunday to drag friends here that are afraid of big crowds,
Hey.
welcome to house church this
Yeah.
week because there's 5 of us.
Yep. It'll be fine.
So-
And half of those people are the pastor's family.
It's one of them. It's one of those weeks. Oh well. Okay. All right. It's your turn. Take it away.
All right. My question, get to know your pastor for today is, what do you wish you had more time to do?
What do I wish I had more time to do?
Yes.
It's not one of those existential crisis questions. It's a hard question to answer.
I didn't want it to be existential crisis. This is
No, it's not like my day off question.
ruined your whole week.
Yeah. I'm in that winter funk
Yeah.
where I don't have a lot of motivation to spend time on extra things.
Yeah. So what do you wish you had more motivation to do?
Oh, okay. This one. I'll say this one. Say the question one more time so I answer it.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
Youth ministry.
Okay.
Youth ministry, 100%. It's the one thing, and I've shared with people, I do a lot at the church, you know, small church pastors, they typically do.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, a lot. And I'm leading the youth group too. It's very weird to be a youth pastor and a senior pastor and a music leader and all these things at the same time. It's very hard to do. But there's not enough mental time.
Right.
I think that's where you start to differentiate, you know, between actual physical
Yeah.
time and then the amount of ability your brain has. So when you're preparing, and I've been mad at myself, and I've said this openly a couple times to Carrie and others, I'm frustrated with myself. And I said it to the church board. I'm frustrated because I'm not able to give the students, everything that they deserve for me to be able to give them. I have nothing left to give. I'm giving them all I got left in the tank, but it's not enough. It's really not. I'm not proud of it. I'm a very excellence-driven person. So Sunday mornings to me, some of my discontent over the past 9 months it hasn't felt excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm big on that. If you're going to do something, you got to do it really, really well.
Yeah.
And youth group, we're doing it. But I'm looking back at the years that I was just a youth pastor and a music leader, and it was so much more. I had to find my way a lot, but there were bursts of energy and moments where, you could tell it was what the kids deserved. And I'm not saying they're getting shortchanged, but there's a lot of kind of getting by with some of the components. I want more mental time.
Yeah. I know that
to give to the students. That's the one thing. There we go. Kind of not an existential crisis, but a pastoral crisis is maybe the thing. All right. So to you, what's the one thing you wish you had more, right?
Yeah.
You had more time.
Wish I had more time to do. I was kind of in the same boat when I first read it. I was like, I wish I had more time to do ministry stuff because I'm only here twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. A lot of it is, I look at full-time ministers because there's no part-time ministry.
No, there's not.
It's not real.
They'll pay you part-time.
It's a lie.
They will expect full-time.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm like, man, if I had one day where it's like planning with Josh Day, and that's the day where we got the next month or whatever planned, that would be good. And then the next day I could do this, and then the next day I could do that. That's where I wish I could use my time differently, maybe.
Oh, yeah. More creatively.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I just don't have time to do that.
No, we need to pay you so that you can do that. You can do that. You can make time to do that. It would be unethical for us to allow you to do that.
Yeah.
100%.
And then I also wish I had more time to sit down and just read a book that I enjoy. I do a lot.
No, absolutely not.
I do a lot.
You have
of
to
reading.
read so much.
I know. I do a lot of reading. I do. I read a lot.
So you want to read at work and then go home and read?
But it's good. It's always been my go-to hobby is reading for enjoyment. And so I wish I had more time.
Play a video game that's story driven where you got to read a lot of text.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But then I sit down and because I've been so busy doing everything else, I fall asleep. So maybe mental time. Okay. This seems to be a theme.
That's my point. That's my point. When I sit down to read, my brain's already fried.
You're already somewhere else.
I just read 200 pages this week. I don't have any more to give.
I mean, it is crazy the amount of reading. Oh, it just is nuts.
It is.
The amount of reading I've had to do.
Mm-hmm. Pastors read a lot.
Yeah.
Well, good pastors anyway. There's a lot of jokers out there that don't educate themselves anymore. But
I also really like Audible. And that's not for everybody.
Listen,
that's not for everybody.
Are you kidding me? My ADHD is in one ear and out the other. It's just whoop. Have I been listening to something? I think there's been some noise.
Keith and we read a lot of Brandon Sanderson. That's the author that we read together. And so he's already read all of his books. And I'm still going through and I'm reading it on Audible. And I'll come up and I'll ask him a question or I'll say, hey, do you, when this happened, what did you think about when this happened or whatever? And he'll be like, I don't remember that happening, Caitlin. I don't know what you're talking about. And so I'm like, oh, so you didn't really read it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Well,
squirrel.
Yeah, that is. Okay, so there we have it.
We're tired.
2 pastors who wish they had more to give.
More mental capacity.
More time, more capability to be creative and those kinds of things.
Just more. I just want to do more.
That's a good way to pray for your pastors. At least, your pastors at Harbor. We do carry heavy loads. We try to do a lot, and we don't have enough to be able to build the church the way that it needs to be built for long-term sustainability and a future that's bright for our kids and grandkids. And we're given everything that we got. And in a lot of ways, I think you could say, we're not doing this as good. I'm very well aware that we're not doing a lot of things as good as we could.
Yeah.
There's just too much pressure on the pastor's shoulders to carry every load. And so it's a good way to pray for your pastors, that God give us the strength we need while we're needing to do this hard work. But also pray for each other that God would begin to stir and create space in you to be able to minister in the church that you go to. Whether you go to Harbor or not, if you listen to this, you go somewhere else, your great responsibility is to each other in the church, not let's hire another staff pastor to do more work so we don't have to, which is largely has become professional ministry, especially as churches kind of got bigger. We've lost the art of taking care of each other, specifically in our discipleship and stuff. So maybe that's a good, pray for your pastors here at Harbor, that God can help create the mental space to give the teenagers and the kids what they deserve, but also pray for yourself. God, how do you want to use me so that I can have some of that load? And
which is a good prayer to pray anyway.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. All the time. Churches are only as good and valuable and healthy as their people who are engaged and involved or not.
Yep.
I used to hear a lot, and it was meant in a good way, and I'm not being cynical about it. I used to hear a lot at Harbor, if they just come, they'll hear you preach, and that'll be enough. Listen, my preaching's made just as many people mad as it has made happy, and made as many people leave as it has made stay. But I think the misnomer where we got it wrong maybe was, no, the pastor and their preaching is a big component, especially to younger families coming and staying at a church. But if they feel like that's all there is to offer is this guy standing at a pulpit or gal standing at a pulpit, and there's no other life, they're not staying. They won't stay for that. So it's important. A healthy church is where the church is being the church with and for each other. So, we got to start praying for that.
Yeah. It's always good to be reminded that God calls us to serve.
We stopped using in children's ministry I've tried really hard to erase the word volunteer from church language. You're not a volunteer. You're serving.
Yeah.
And I remember Matt, when I coached basketball for a couple of years, Matt was the head coach. I was his assistant coach, Matt Ortman. I think he moved back to the Chicago area. Anyway, had a great relationship with him. And I remember him talking about his church one night, coming back on the bus late at night from a basketball game. And he was like, this weekend is mine and my wife's turn to serve in the children's ministry. He didn't say volunteer. He didn't say, I'm in the nursery this week. He didn't say any of that. He just said, it's our turn to serve. And I was like, that is the healthiest, most wonderful way to view your role in the church. You are not a volunteer. It's your turn to serve.
Yeah.
And when you approach your church in a service mindset and a foot washing mindset and a discipleship mindset, that's when your church comes to life. So anyway, I'm not going to rant about that anymore.
I can. I'll rant forever.
Yeah, come and serve.
Yep.
Come and serve. That's part of our vision statement or mission statement, whatever it is that we use. The belong, serve, grow. It's a place to belong and to serve and to grow. And I really believe that serve in the middle is what pulls all of those together.
Yeah.
Growth and belonging come through serving. And so serve in your church, wherever you're at. Don't just be a seat warmer.
Yeah.
Serve your church and you will become connected to that church 100%. So if you're not serving at Harbor, serve. I'm ready to I want to see this church become what I think God has always wanted it to become, which is a group of people who love each other well by serving one another. on Sundays, on Wednesdays. And we got some people that have really stepped up. Like when I think of a good servant heart right now, I think of Marilyn.
Yep.
And she's going to hate me for saying this out loud. But
Who cares?
yeah, that's okay. Don't argue with me, Marilyn.
He's the pastor.
That's right. So, when I look at Marilyn, she, it's so easy with Marilyn on Wednesday nights. She serves by cooking meals and taking care of Wednesday night stuff. She even takes that load off. We talk about making room. She takes that load off. She sets up the table. She pulls out the plates. She pulls out she does all of those things. Sometimes I do it for her just because I'm a snot and, whatever. But most of the time she handles that. It's not done with complaining. She just does it.
Yeah.
And I watch her serving like that. It just makes Wednesdays so much easier and more exciting for me as a pastor because it feels like it's an us thing, not a me thing. So yeah, serve, and this church will become not worried about spring break Sunday,
which we are.
We're all serve. We all have servant hearts, so we won't be worried about March 23rd, 2025,
and partially March 30th.
Yeah, March 30th is going to be rough too. So please invite people back to that. Please invite people this Sunday and sit in the front rows. Okay. All right. There you go. There you go. You got words from your pastors today. So today I want to talk about, we mentioned it on Tuesday. I want to talk about being good neighbors and what that kind of means. You ever had a bad neighbor? And you ever had a good neighbor? Maybe we'll start there. Let's not wait. Reset the morning brain. Let's not start with the negative. Do you ever have a memory of a really good neighbor?
When we lived in Noblesville, our neighborhood was very friendly. It was a bunch of older people, so that might be why. But they were always out and about, and I had Asher as a baby through toddler there. And so we took a lot of walks around the neighborhood, and it was a lot of like waving and,
oh yeah,
how are you doing? And our neighbor across the street, she gave us some irises, I think, and we gave her some of ours, and it was just very, friendly. It wasn't like super, she did this for me and it changed my life. It was just like friendliness and kindness. And she talked about, she just, let you into her life and what she did and her kids' lives, and it's nice to have people to talk to like that.
Yeah, that's nice. Not everyone has a good neighbor story. So that's nice.
I also have a bad neighbor story if you want to hear it.
Let her rip. Let her rip.
Oh, is not really a neighbor. She was a roommate in college. That was a bad experience.
That's a close neighbor, though.
It's a very close neighbor.
Your bunk beds are close to each other.
After that, I decided that I was going to pay extra for a single room.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I actually never had a bad roommate experience in college.
That's good.
College, I was very blessed. I did have a roommate that wasn't technically supposed to be a roommate that stayed with us for a while, and that was a literal nightmare. And then I had a couple of roommates, 2006, that were just terrifying. Not terrifying, terrible, very damaging, whatever. And so, yeah, bad neighbors are easy to come by. They are. So I was thinking about this earlier this week about how, let me say that later, but I have good neighbors next door. Gary and Sherry Lynn live to our west, the neighbors on the west side. West side. And when we first moved into the parsonage where we're at now, which is now our house, but the church bought it as a parsonage. We moved in. They were there, and we were young. I mean, we were in our 30s, but we were younger, and being in a neighborhood was not, we hadn't ever lived in a real neighborhood. When we lived in Kansas City, Carrie and we were there for a couple of years in a little bungalow house. Seminary Row is what we called it. So, and Marty Butler was the CFO at the time that bought these houses, and the seminary renovated them. And he said, like, we want to make them really nice, because the nicer you make things, the more apt people are to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we lived in that, that little bungalow, and we had neighbors, but they were all seminary students, that kind of thing. But it wasn't really a neighborhood in that it was just a road, and we're sandwiched between Troost and Paseo, or Prospect and Paseo, and those kinds of things. And so it wasn't really a neighborhood for us; it's just a street. We moved to Florida for Lake City. We lived in a trailer behind the church. And there was a neighborhood behind us, but we were tucked behind the church. And, you really don't live in a neighborhood. Yeah. So you don't really think about neighborly kinds of things. So when we moved to here, then we moved to Walnut Street, and that was largely changing into less of a neighborhood area and more of just a kind of a busy passerby transient situation, especially with some of the slumlords in this town. And so didn't really feel it there. So we move into where we are now, and we have this neighborhood. It's the first time we've really felt like we live in a neighborhood. And our neighbors are Gary, Sherry Lynn, and being young neighborhood dwellers, we didn't really have a high sense of pride for our home and property, and especially didn't really have a good appreciation for how our home and property affects the people around us. This is our first experience with that. So we largely kind of felt like early on, we largely kind of lived like college students.
This feels like the basis for HOAs, but continue.
I hate HOAs.
I do too. But the more you're talking about it,
I know.
and I'm like, I know where you're going.
I see where.
I'm like, this sounds like an HOA.
Yeah,
but continue.
You get it. You get it,
yeah.
right? And whatever. I can go on a rant there, but so I wasn't cutting my own grass at the time. Ray was cutting it occasionally. Sometimes it was once a week. Sometimes it was once every 3 weeks. It was grass tall and short, and there were weeds in the flower beds and all of these kinds of things. And we'd let them grow really tall. We just didn't really pay attention to it. But so there were, I'd come home and summertime comes around, and spring and summer and fall in that first year, and I start to feel a lot of tension, not from Gary and Sherry at all. But I look over at their home, and they're out mowing it every week. They've got their landscaping done nicely. It's not anything extravagant by any means, but they take a lot of pride, and they were taking a lot of care of their home and their property. And I started to feel this kind of tension in my own heart that was, I felt like I was dragging them down. But I wasn't. Listen, they didn't pick on us. They didn't say anything to us or anything like that. But I would look at mine, and I would look at them. And of course, they're older than us. And I started, for the first time in my life, wanting to keep up with them. They took care of their property really well. They took care of their house really. They had a lot of pride with it. And we're not perfect at this yet, don't get me wrong. But they have a lot of pride in it. And it looks beautiful and comfy. I was like, I don't want to drag them down. I want to like try to get to where they are. I want to take better care of my property so that they don't look out the window and think, we try so hard. But these Joneses next door, they just like killing me, And at that point, Ray stopped mowing the grass. So we started mowing, and so I tried to get out every week and do that. And then over the years, what we've done is we've gradually just tried to do things a little better.
Yeah.
And we're not near perfect, don't get me wrong. We're still a bit lazy. There's some stuff out in the yard. We kind of look like we're turning into rednecks. But, we'll get those out of the yard and out front of the garage. But, I remember one year Carrie brought a guy to the house that washed the outside of the house and things like that. And then we started doing a little bit better with our landscaping, and we wanted to like edge things a little bit better, make things look prettier, put some mulch in. We as a church kind of came together when it was still the parsonage, and we spent some money on some landscaping work to try to make it look less crazy, because the previous owners had a lot of invasives that they grew. And so we invested a little bit in that. And And then, now it is what it is. My point in sharing that is the way that they lived and took care of their yard rubbed off on me.
Mm-hmm.
Look, it made me want to do better because they were doing so well with that in that regard. And I wanted to kind of match them. I wanted to do better because of them and not the other way around. Like they didn't come down to my level, thank goodness. But it just inspired, maybe that's a good word.
Yeah.
It inspired Carrie and I and me specifically to want to do better
Mm-hmm.
so that I could honor them, my neighbors who, I looked at the yard. I'm like, man, that looks so much better than my yard. Like, why? I want that to look good too.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about being good neighbors. They were always. We have a good relationship, and they're super kind and sweet. And Matt's been twisting their arm to come visit. I hope they do someday. I really enjoy them as neighbors. But
Twist harder.
He is. But them rubbing off on us and inspiring us to grow up a bit and to view our property differently because of how they viewed theirs. And we doing that because we want to be better neighbors to them because they were better neighbors to us, that kind of thing. And how being good neighbors is something that rubs off. So obviously you can, I think, hint where I'm going spiritually in this kind of conversation. But for me, if I were to answer the question, have you had good neighbors? Yeah. I'll talk about Gary and Sherry and the, how they took care of their property and stuff and how that affected me.
Yeah.
I think sometimes as Christians, we need to remember that that's the effect we can have on people in our neighborhoods. What does it mean to be a good neighbor? And why is being a good neighbor important? Go ahead.
I like that it's very, it's just them living their lives well that is rubbed off on you.
100%. Yeah, thank you for saying it that
like
way.
It's
Yes.
not anything crazy that they did for you.
Not at all.
It's not like they helped you in some, miraculous manner. It's just them living their lives well.
Yes.
And you're like, I want to do that too.
Thank you for saying it that way. 100%. Yeah, they live their life well there. And that did inspire me to want to live mine well too. Yeah, that's really.
A lot of times when you, let's take the evangelism route. When you encourage people to be evangelistic or talk to people about Jesus, they take it to like the most extreme that you can take it.
Yeah.
And it's that can be hard. Like
a lot of shouting.
Yeah, a lot of shouting, a lot of throwing your opinion in people's faces, et cetera, et cetera. But being a good neighbor can just be having a relationship with people and showing them how you live your life.
Living the Christian life well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. We were studying Luke last night in Refuel. And when we're in chapter 5. And
Look at you guys go.
I know we're
zoom,
taking
zoom.
off. But as you were talking about living your life well and people seeing, not hearing, I don't shout at my neighbors, you're got to get right with the Lord. I don't do that. I just try to live my life well and point people to Christ through, kindness and generosity, those kinds of things. But we were studying Luke chapter 5 and 12 to 16 is Jesus cleansing a leper. And as soon as you start talking, this comes to mind. It's very fresh, but he goes to the synagogue or goes to one of the cities, and this man with leprosy comes up to him. He's covered in leprosy, and he falls down at Jesus' feet, and he's like, "Lord, if you choose, you could make me clean." Basically, like, will you choose to make me clean? And Jesus says, "I do choose, be clean." And the man gets up and he's clean from all of his leprosy. And Jesus says in verse 14, he says, "And Jesus ordered him to tell no one." Tell no one. Instead, Jesus says, go, he said, and show yourself to the priest. And as Moses commanded, make an offering for your cleansing, for a testimony to them. It was about showing. We wrestled with that a little bit yesterday. And as you were talking about being a good neighbor and living your life well for Christ, and you bring up the evangelist part, our tendency in Christian life is to first speak.
Yeah.
Like we got something to tell. And you're not, I mean, listen, you should have something to
yeah.
tell. Your testimony is very important. Your testimony is important.
Yeah.
Let's get that right. Your testimony is important. But the first thing you're called to do is show. Live the Christian life well so that cleansing that God has done in your life is what people begin to see and become inspired by. Is by you living your life well as a good neighbor. And then speak a little bit. And I think that's really important. And I think that's where I'm where I've been inspired in my own Christian life just by Gary and Sherry and being a good neighbor. They live their life well. It inspired me to want to live my life well as a good neighbor towards them because they were so different than me and where we were. But it lifted us up because they lived well. And maybe it's the same thing as Christians as we kind of remember that we're not called to talk first. We're called to go show the cleansing work that God has done in our lives. What could that do? What kind of inspiration could that be for the people around us? Maybe instead of being afraid in our neighborhoods, that we're going to be dragged down, maybe we should recognize that the work God's done in our lives, if we live well as good neighbors, might actually inspire the people around us, even if they don't quite believe in Christ yet, might actually inspire them to live a better life as a good neighbor simply because of how you are living your life well as a Christian.
Yeah. It's very much if you... Okay. So Ella, she is a Spitfire, and she is going to be a leader one day. You heard it here first.
I could see that.
And I tell her all the time, it matters how you act. Other people are watching.
Yeah.
It matters how you act. So recently we've been dealing a lot with tantrums. And she doesn't get her way. She drops to the ground immediately and she starts crying.
Yeah.
Because she wants to get what she wants.
Yeah.
And so I'll say, Ella, who taught you to do that? Did you learn that in preschool? Who did you see do that? Because I want her to realize you didn't act that way before, and now you are. So it does matter who you're around. It matters who you're watching and who you're letting influence you. And dropping to the floor and throwing a fit is not being a good neighbor to me. So stop it.
That's right. It's good wisdom because what you're saying there by default to an adult believer or a teenage believer or whatever is you can capitulate to that bad neighbor kind of like how you live not well. You can sink if you want, or you can choose to live well as a Christian believer, believing that those that aren't are actually going to be inspired to, instead of falling to the floor and having a tantrum, they would be inspired to be Ella that doesn't throw a tantrum.
Let's not do that
anymore.
anymore.
we might not do, that's the thing about young kids. But, maybe in today's conversation, we're really dealing with an infant Christian or a toddler Christian and one that is maturing, is recognizing that my first priority is living well so that it would inspire other people to live well.
That's why I love multi-generational churches. And it's so important to have older Christians who are solid in the faith, and they have, they can.
I like where this is going.
Yes, they can give you good advice and they can lead you down good paths. And it's really important as young Christians to hear it and take it as good criticism
Yeah.
and be like, that is wisdom that I need to be listening to because they've lived through a lot and they've grown in God, and I want to follow that path.
If I were to go a little deeper in Gary and Sherry and mine and Carrie's neighborly relationship, they're older, we were younger, right? So in some ways I'm looking up to them and I'm inspired by them, and I'm sure they went through years where they had to figure all that out for themselves too. Think about church. On Sunday morning, we have all of our elementary kids in here through the whole worship time until we pray a blessing over them after tithes and offerings. And we do that for a reason, right? Yeah. We want them to learn the songs. We want them to sing with the congregation. We want them to hear the announcements, so they're a part of that. We want them to participate in offering, so they see the movement of the church and they see adults who are participating and giving back to God what is God's, and even above and beyond at times. All we're really saying at that point is we're hoping to inspire those kids, the next generation of church leaders. We're hoping to inspire them by how we worship well and here as adults to worship well later. Now, they're not going to get it right. They crawl on each other's laps and spin around, and they bug mom and dad, and they do all of these things. But imagine for a moment what they see out of you.
Yeah.
Now, I have a unique view because I'm up here. Imagine for a moment the kids in our church and the teenagers in our church. They see you as an adult. And you're on your Sunday morning worship, right? What kind of neighbor are you being? When they see you in and out, in and out, in and out. Or the phone's out in your lap, playing a game or scrolling on Facebook or something like that. What about during the music? The songs are out and you're not participating, or you're kind of giving the bare minimum. On the vice versa, when you're worshiping the Lord freely and you're giving the Lord your best. You know, when instead of the straight face, kind of disengaged, tired look, you're engaged and you're happy and you look happy to be here, and even down to the fellowship cafe time. You know, when the kids see if you're being short or grumpy or whatever, versus really engaging with people. I think why I like where you took us there was it says to me, okay, if you think of your life and your space in this church on a Sunday morning, think of it like properties. You bring in your house and property. They bring in their house and property. And you're either going to be showing them a living your life well, if we want to use the Gary Sherry mentality, and they're going to see that, and they're going to want to start manicuring their lawn and kind of being inspired to live up to that standard that you've kind of laid out for them in wisdom, or they're going to be empowered to not ever care about their property or whatever. However you want to say that. If you could take that too far, I'm sure. But if we could think about it that way, it might change how we do this on a Sunday morning. I think maybe in some ways I've often taught that we can't really be compassionate to people outside in our community if we're not first and foremost loving and compassionate to each other here.
Yeah.
I come out of 1 Samuel there a lot.
Yeah.
It always has to start at home.
Yeah.
So if you're loving and taking care of each other well here, and that means tough love too.
Yeah.
So if you're loving and taking care of each other well here, then you're able to actually be compassionate to people outside the building. But it's got to start here. And I mean, for that case in point, if you want a church that people come in, they're feeling inspired to grow into God's, grow with God's Spirit, grow in discipleship, grow spiritually, grow emotionally, be inspired in mission to do ministry and feel that call of God, it starts with how well we live on a Sunday morning. But I would challenge even my church to think about the kids are in here, and you're going to inspire them one of two ways. You're going to inspire them to worship the Lord well, because they're going to see you.
Yeah.
Or you're going to inspire them to have an unkept lawn.
Yeah.
That's not really maturing. And that's a potent thing to think about.
I like how when you can really see how well it inspires them during the prayer time.
Yes. Yeah, they come to the altar.
Yeah.
Not all of them really know
Right.
what's going on.
Yeah.
They really don't. That's actual prevenient grace. That is by definition what we believe is Wesleyan holiness people.
Absolutely.
This is prevenient grace.
Yeah.
This is God working before.
Yep.
This is God leading the way in their lives. And they're going to figure all that out. If they're watching you come to the altar, that's why they come.
Yeah.
Because they watched people who are faithful lead the way.
Yep.
And that kind of inspired them in a little way. Maybe I go pray. Or, they see someone praying that is upset and they go as kids.
Yeah.
Put their arms around them. I need my adults to do better at that.
Yeah.
If I can hold you accountable, I need you to be more like our children. They have the better yard at the moment. You see someone praying, you should come, put your arm around them, pray with them. That's what the people of God are supposed to do. But the kids are doing that because people did that. Such a good vision. At the end of that passage, in verse 16, it says, or verse 15, it says, when he says, just go, don't tell anyone about me, go and show yourself. Let that be your testimony is what God's done in you.
Yeah.
Verse 15 says, but now more than ever, the word about Jesus spread abroad, and many crowds would gather to hear him. I'm sure the priest talked. I'm sure he spoke a little bit. But the first thing was people saw a drastic change in this man's life. And just by showing, Jesus spread.
Yeah.
And the power of Jesus spread. You live well as a Christian. First and foremost, that's what will spread the gospel.
Absolutely.
Living well. And you got to ask yourself, in church on a Sunday, at home with your family, you're out at the grocery store, or you're in a restaurant, or just in your neighborhood where your house is, you got to ask yourself if you're the type of neighbor that is spreading Jesus and inspiring people to want to be a part of that or not. Are you the type of neighbor where they look at you and they say, you've been made different. You're different than how the world would be. And I mean, there's plenty of barking Christians out there. There's not a lot that live well.
Yeah.
Like really live well.
Yeah.
We love to make excuses for a yard that's not been cut or a flower bed that's not been taken care of. We love to make excuses for, well, I'm imperfect and I'm just a work in progress. Okay, that's right. But a work in progress is someone that doesn't settle for constantly having a train wreck of a yard.
Yeah.
You got to ask yourself, what kind of neighbor am I to the people around me, in my church, to these kids and the teenagers, to each other? And maybe that's a good word for some of our older congregants. God's not done with you yet.
Yeah.
You're the ones, you're the Gary and Sherrys in my life that people look up to. And they're going to be inspired, not just by your testimony, but want to become the type of Christians someday that they see in you. I want to be elevated like that. So God's not done with you, no matter how old you are. You're the inspiration for the next generation, not of what you bark, but just by how you live your life. You're that inspiration for them. So what kind of neighbor are you going to be here?
Yeah.
I think we were talking about Dawn a little bit ago, and
Yes.
doing this work that the church hasn't supported the best on, with blessing our teachers and first-year teachers. And like, I look at Dawn, and she's not going to like this, but I look at Dawn, and
It's not your podcast. You don't
it's
get
right.
to decide,
I can
Dawn.
say what I want, but Dawn's really inspiring to me with the effort and the willingness to keep pushing forward and make missions and missional movement in our church a real thing. That's inspiring because it pulls people to want to keep up.
Yep.
So Dawn, you're a good neighbor. Marilyn,
Good neighbor.
you're a good neighbor. And there's many others. I won't name them all. They're the two examples we've talked about today. So yeah, just to Gary and Sherry, thanks for being good neighbors, because it's helped us, though we don't get it right all the time. It's helped Carrie and I become better neighbors.
Yeah.
To be thoughtful about how we're affecting the people around us. And we did that because in their wisdom, that we wanted to live well to complement them. And so thanks for being good neighbors. And at the church, I think now's the time to start thinking on a March 23rd, 2025, with where we sit and whether we show up or not and how we are when people come. That's the first step in being good neighbors here.
Yeah.
And then at home, in our workplace, when we're out at a restaurant, whatever it might be, being good neighbors. That is the most contagious thing.
Absolutely. Live your life well.
Yeah. And that's not a legalistic thing.
That's a Christian thing.
Yeah, just if God's made a big difference in your life, then live like it. If God's been compassionate and made you more compassionate, then live compassionately and live more gentle, live patiently, live kindly.
Yep.
All the fruit of the Spirit, right? Like, live like that. And if you live like that and you show them a life that's been changed, that's what spreads Christ in your neighborhood, 100% of the time.
Yep.
Carrie and I are known by neighbors 3 or 4 houses down. We're the churchy people. We don't do anything crazy, and we don't have a relationship with them. It's kind of cheeky because Carrie introduced me as a pastor one time, but the churchy people. Well, that puts a little bit of weight on it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if they know you're churchy people, then you better live like churchy people when you're there, which is not legalistic. It's just patient and kind and good and gentle and all those fruits of the Spirit. So thank you to you who are good neighbors. Thank you to you at the church who are being good neighbors to our kids and our teenagers. And then let's collectively be good neighbors and live our life well, believing that this is going to inspire people to be good neighbors too.
And if you want to serve in your church, come find us. We'll put you to work.
That's right. Hey, we're on a roll. This 52 minutes. That's a good ending point. Thanks for joining us at Two Pastors and a Podcast and talking today about being good neighbors. So go be one.
Bye.
Bye. Love y'all.
Do.